When using coloring pencils in the art studio, you can find them in the drawer labeled Colored Pencils. Take one box for your use at your table. You might also need to use other supplies like a pencil sharpener, a kneaded eraser, which is a special type of eraser, and what's called a blending stump, which helps your colors smooth together. When you get back to your table, remember to share the coloring pencils at your table with everybody else, as there is only one box per table. To take care of pencil sharpeners, you're going to make sure to sharpen them using a handheld sharpener like this and not an electric sharpener. An electric sharpener is too strong. You're going to place the pencil inside of the hole and twist the sharpener. You're probably used to the idea of twisting the pencil, but that puts too much pressure onto the lead. So instead, turn the pencil sharpener, not the pencil. There are two ends to the pencils, but let's be sure to only sharpen one end. If you are seen sharpening two ends, you will lose this privilege. Only sharpen one end and make sure to use a handheld sharpener, turning the sharpener and not the pencil. Once you are done sharpening, take the little scraps that you've created and empty it out. That way the next person can be successful sharpening their pencil. Pencils can easily break when banged or thrown or tossed around the room, so be careful with them and don't use them as drumsticks. The lead inside of it breaks when this happens, which is why when you sharpen it, little pieces fall out often. When using coloring pencils, make sure you have a pencil that is sharpened and then begin. Notice that the sharp of a pencil comes to a point. The point is good for thin lines, and the edge is great for coloring in. When using coloring pencils, you want to press softly so you can build up colors. Because let's be real, nothing is really that color red. There are some other colors in it too. If you need to make a firm point, use the tip, but then color in with the side and build up layers of color gradually. Holding it on its side gives you more freedom to press softly, like here with this green. Or with this purple, notice how I'm holding it on the edge and coloring softly. When I color softly, I can build up colors easily, like this. I start with a blue, and then I add a purple, and then I add many colors on top to build up a unique color of my very own. It does turn into an intense color eventually. Coloring pencils require you to take time and be patient. They are a medium that requires you to work deliberately and take your time to create a well-drawn image. There are several different techniques to use when using a colored pencil. One is called back and forth, and this is the typical back and forth that you've used since you were little, where you just never pick up your pencil and you go back and forth. This works very well for many applications. The next one is called scumbling. Scumbling is a technique you've probably also used often, and it is a continual scribble mark, circular marks, without lifting up your pencil. It gives it some texture. The next one is called stippling. Stippling is where you create lots of little dots next to each other to look like texture and to fill in the space. Our next technique is called hatching. It's little straight lines right next to each other. Little tiny lines, not very long, that form a texture to fill in the space. When you apply hatching in one direction on top of another direction, that's called cross-hatching. Notice I start with this blue going one way and then I turn it to go the other way. That's called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching adds some extra dimension and more texture. No matter what technique you use, you can burnish the colors together. That means to make them smooth. You can do that using a white pencil as seen here, which blends the colors together, or a blending stump, which you will notice that the blending stump gets a little bit of color on it because all the colors have been squished together to look smooth and soft. When using coloring pencils, there is a way to erase your mistakes. But the best way to do it is not to use your typical eraser, as this squishes the color into the paper and makes it much harder to build up the beautiful layers of color. Instead, you're going to use what's called a kneaded eraser. It starts out tough, but once you start playing with it, like clay or Play-Doh or putty, it gets smooth and malleable. Then once you have it smooth and malleable and kind of squishy, you're going to dab it onto your color. This does take a little bit of patience, but it will allow you to correct your mistake afterwards. Versus when you use a typical eraser, you can't correct your mistake because now you've ruined that piece of the paper. So just take a kneaded eraser and dab away. When combining all of these ideas, blending colors, erasing, layering, using different coloring techniques, that is the way to use colored pencil. But one more thing to keep in mind is to outline at the very last. That way you can clean up the edges. Now that we've talked about some ways to use coloring pencils properly, I would like you to demonstrate that knowledge for me. So grab a worksheet and grab your sketchbook and complete the tasks inside your sketchbook using the assigned colors and the assigned materials. Grab the kneaded eraser and the burnishing tools and bring them to me when you are finished to receive your punch.